Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time Show. We're here for NFL Week 6. We got our preview and pick show on board. Our man Achilles Rain is with us as always. Are you ready to get into NFL Week 6?
Well, let's see. I know I'm tired, and I know you're tired, but I'm ready to make some picks, buddy. Let's talk some football.
All right, we'll talk some football. Soccer's on the screen in front of me, so we're going to be keeping up with the Chelsea-Brentford game while we discuss some NFL games. Football and football is the name of the game today. All right, so let's get into our mutual picks. We got to find 5 picks that we like this week. It's an interesting slate this week. I didn't see one really, really big game. Probably the biggest game on the board is Arizona-Cleveland, but Nick Chubb's out, so that loses a little bit of luster. Dallas, New England, maybe a big game, but I don't think we quite put New England in that category quite yet. The Chargers go to Baltimore. That's probably a big, big one. And that's about it here. Were there any games that you looked at on this board that stood out to you?
No, I mean, you pretty much, called them all. I mean, I am interested in a couple of games. For one, that Pittsburgh-Seattle game, I kind of want to see what Seattle's going to look like with this injury to, Wilson. And I mean, I also kind of want to see what the Giants are going to look like versus the Rams.
Bad would be my guess.
Yeah, I just want to see, how much of an impact. Obviously, these are their main guys that are hurt, but there's times when you could lose your main guys and the team steps up and, and the overall team steps up and they perform sometimes better than when their main guys there. So I doubt that'll be the case, but I'd like to see at least what they have, go for it as far as depth.
Yeah. Here now, even now, with Mike Glennon, Devontae Booker, and Kadarius Toney as the main trio. He is still riding high with the New York Giants here.
And this will be the week they win.
It probably will be. I am eyeing that Seahawks game as well. I might zig a little bit here from what everybody probably thinks I'm going to ride, but let's start it off. Let's kick it off. We're going back to London here. The Miami Dolphins versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars are 3-point underdogs. The total sits at 47. The first half line sits at 2.5 for the Miami Dolphins. Total sits at 23. They pulled Tua off IR here. I'm assuming they activated him so he can play in this game. He is in London. So we're going to get the Tua Dolphins here. Based off last week, they really, really looked poor. The Jaguars are now in a 20-game losing streak here. So this is really a bad game here. I will say I lean a little bit Dolphins here. They played really, really poor here, but I just think maybe with Tua in there, maybe that invigorates them a little bit on the offensive end, and we'll see if this defense can pick back up after a really poor performance versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. What are you seeing in this game?
Yeah, I pretty much feel the same way you do. I think that, Tua, if he does play, which, we kind of assume that he will, he's going to re-energize this team and probably, give him a little momentum boost. And as you mentioned, they have been playing poorly over the last couple of weeks, but we saw early on this season that at least the defense was showing up. It was the offense that was having a lot of issues. But, I don't know how much of a boost it really gives them. Lucky for them, they're playing a pretty bad team that I think is still reeling from the whole controversy of their head coach, and it just doesn't seem to be going away. So I would expect the Dolphins to pull off a win here, especially with Tua if he plays. But even if he doesn't, I still kind of like the Dolphins. It's just probably a game I'm going to stay away from, though.
Yeah, that -3 does make me a little bit nervous. I'm just sort of hedging here. If you really break it down and look like at the Football Outsiders stats in this one, both teams total DVOA. Miami sits at 30. Jacksonville sits at 31 here. So, Defensively, Jacksonville sits at 23, Miami sits at 24. Offensively, Miami sits at 29, Jacksonville, sits at 31. So it's just really, really two poor teams here. Now you factor in a little bit, maybe the Dolphins didn't have their starting quarterback, but they haven't really had the receivers set that they thought they were going to have coming into the season. Waddle's been basically the only one that's been healthy. I don't know if those two are going to play in Parker and Fuller this week. I guess if they could get those three, maybe the offense starts to come around. I still don't totally trust this running game. I do really like Myles Gaskin, but Myles Gaskin probably better in the NFL as a third down back pass catcher out of the backfield than really as your lead back that you're sort of trying to give the carries to over and over in a game, especially with the way Miami has sort of pushed and played this week. So really just a bad game overall. I sense you aren't really big on this game. That might have something to do with watching that poor game and us getting a little bit burned on the New York Jets last week.
Yeah, maybe just a tad bit, but as we all like to say, we only send our best across the pond.
Yes, definitely so. All right, that's enough of that game. We'll move on to a division game here. Green Bay Packers versus Chicago Bears. Bears, 5.5 underdogs at home here. The total sits at 44. First half total sits at plus. The first half total is 22.5. First half spread is 3 points for the Green Bay Packers here. Green Bay coming off. I don't know how to characterize it. I don't want to say poor performance because they racked up a lot of yards, but it was sort of not a ringing endorsement of hard play in that game versus Cincinnati Bengals. The Chicago Bears somehow coming off a win versus the Las Vegas Raiders. They possibly had about 200 yards of total offense in that game. Nonetheless, they somehow sort of dominated and won that game. Probably tells you about where the Raiders are. The Packers tend to own this series. Aaron Rodgers has tended to own this series. But they are going into Chicago. Is that 5.5 number a little bit too big for you? Are a little reticent to take Green Bay on the road here after what you saw last week? Or is Green Bay division game, they're going to wipe these teams out because these are the wins that mean the most to them?
Well, normally I would say that number sits a little too high for me, seeing as how I'm more conservative when it comes to gambling. But honestly, even though both of these teams in some way or another affected, my parlays last week, in a negative way, by the way, I still think that this is one of those games, as you mentioned, being a divisional opponent, divisional rival. We've had these Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bear, matches for a long, long time now, and it always seems to be a pretty exciting match just because these teams know each other so well. And I expect a lot of the same, basically. Aaron Rodgers kind of coming out and dominating, trying to put a stamp on, the NFC North and trying to prove who the dominant team in that division is. So even though it sits at 5.5, I still kind of like the Packers to pull off the win here and cover the spread. I think that this is definitely the right type of situation for Aaron Rodgers to get that offense going. And not that they've been bad, but they haven't been able to finish. And I think this is the week where, they have an opportunity to get back into a good rhythm.
Yeah, I can see where you're taking it. The public is really, really on this. 72% of the 74% of the tickets are on Green Bay. 72% of the money is on Green Bay. So everybody is really on Green Bay on this one. I'm just curious what you think of the Bears here. They did get that win last week. They are, to say they are, 3-2. So is this a better Bears team than we think, or have they just sort of done what Bears teams do? Cannot beat the elite level teams, but sort of find their way and win the games versus the lower tier teams.
Yeah, I don't think that this Bears team is good. I really don't. I think that, part of the reason why they won last week wasn't so much because of them. I thought that matchup was more about the Raiders. And I felt like the Raiders lost that game. It wasn't the Bears that won that game. As you mentioned earlier, you look at the numbers and they were poor. If you would just talk about stats, I would have been like, okay, they got dominated. But, in fact, they actually won that game. And we know the situation going on with the Raiders right now. So, I'm sure that played, a big part in the outcome of that game. But I really don't think the Bears are that good. Just when I watch them on tape, I don't watch a lot of Bear games, but the games that I do watch and even the highlights that I catch, I just don't see it, especially with their young quarterback under helm. I just think that they're better served to have a veteran quarterback right now while Fields kind of learns the game a little bit more. But obviously, they want him out there. They want him under the gun, and they really want him to feel the fire, feel the burn. And it might make him a better player in the end. But as of right now, I just don't think this team is really that good.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I don't know if I want to put this right in our mutuals, but I definitely think it probably should be in the mix there. And maybe if we're a little short, we come back to it. I'm just a little hurt off of what I saw from Green Bay last week. I don't think they will be lazy again. I think this one's more one where they blow it out. But I just didn't like what I saw. They seemed to get up in that Bengals game. Then they just gave up a couple plays, thought they could kick a field goal to win it at the end, didn't get it, and made that game much, much more difficult than it was when basically, if you look at those numbers, offensively, they were cruising and dominating the Bengals with that pass game, and they just were like, okay, we got this, and started running really conservative plays there.
Yeah, I mean, if we go by the trends, then the smart play would be to take Chicago in this one, just because Green Bay, even though in certain games they've really gotten up on the competition, they let their opponent right back into it. So if we were just following the trends of this season, I would say the smarter money, the safer money would be to take Chicago and getting 5.5 points. But realistically, being a divisional opponent, as I said, Aaron Rodgers knowing basically the way this team is built and knowing how important these wins are going to be against their divisional rivals, I just don't see him, really taking his foot off the gas in this one.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. So we'll put this one on the back burner, but keep it alive and see how we like it as we go through the rest of the games here. Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals going to the Detroit Lions. Cincinnati is a 3.5-point road favorite. Total sits at 46.5 here. First half, 2.5 points for the Cincinnati Bengals. Total sits at 23. Now, Joe Burrow, I think, is supposed to play. He's on non-talking duty this week, so I don't quite know what that means. Hopefully he can speak on Sunday, because I think that would make it difficult for him to play quarterback if he cannot talk. But honestly here, I like the Lions here. I think it's crazy. As much as we sort of like Cincinnati and how they started the season as 3.5-point road favorites, I'm not quite there to make that leap, even if this is a Detroit Lions team. I mean, I know they're over, but they very easily could have won that Baltimore game, won that Minnesota game, So if you take those two and give Detroit those two wins, what are we saying about Detroit? I think we probably put them in the same category as the Bengals. They play hard. They don't quit. Now, Cincinnati has a little bit more weapons on the offensive side of things, but the Detroit Lions are two 55-plus yard field goals from being 2-3 on this season. So yes, the Bengals have played better, but you saw it. The Bengals went on the road to Chicago, who is, I'd probably put about the same level as the Detroit Lions, and lost that game. I am not in a mood to take Cincinnati minus the 3.5, and I think there's real good value there for Detroit at plus 3.5.
Yeah, I mean, I totally see where you're coming from, and it makes a lot of sense. When I was looking at this game, just like you, I kind of like the Lions better. I think the Lions play really hard. And I don't know, maybe it's just, some Jared Goff leftover love that I've got, but I like the Lions slightly better. I don't want to take anything away from Cincinnati, though. They have been playing really well, especially against really tough competition in games that we pretty much assumed at the beginning of the year they were probably going to get blown out, and they actually ended up winning some of these games. So I don't want to take away anything from them. They play really tough. But so do the Lions. The Lions play really, really tough, and they don't have as many weapons, and they're still making things happen. Now, as you mentioned, they still haven't won a game. So that's something to take into consideration. But, for this young Bengal team to be considered favorites on the road, it just doesn't sit very well with me. So I understand where you're coming from, but it's one of the reasons why I skipped out on this game, just because even though I like the Lions, I feel that there's better weapons in Cincinnati. But even so, I don't think that Cincinnati is ready to be considered a favorite on the road this so far early this season.
Yeah, definitely so. If we could get T. Higgins and trade him over to the Lions, I'd feel a lot more comfortable there. But yeah, I see your point where you probably just pass this one by. You don't want Cincinnati at the 3.5, but much like I cowered out in that Lions game versus the Bears, where I got a little bit of cold feet. I can sort of see where you're coming from too, where you don't really want the Lions when you start looking at the weapons that the Cincinnati Bengals have, and the Vikings did not take advantage of that secondary, but my guess is the Bengals do take advantage of that secondary. It's just whether the Lions can get any sort of pass rush on Joe Burrow there.
Now, is Detroit Stadium still called Ford Field?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, because I did hear from one of my sources inside, deep inside, that Joe Burrow doesn't need to talk. They were going to go with the silent count because they know how rowdy that crowd can get, over in Detroit at Ford Field. So they're going with the silent count. So don't worry about his throat contusion.
All right. So we'll move on to the next game. We'll put that one on the back side of things too, and maybe come back to it and see if we like anything here. Houston Texans go on the road to the Indianapolis Colts, and yes, the Colts played well versus Miami, but them to come in as a 10-point favorite, even versus this poor Texans team, stunned me a little bit when I typed this line down. So Texans, Indianapolis Colts -10. Total sits at 43.5. First half, 4.5 points for the Colts here. Total sits at 21.5. I'm curious what you thought about this line, because I just thought that was way too many points for this Colts team who just won their first game last week.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a combination of what the Colts did last week and what the Texans did last week. One of them was better than expected, and the other one was a lot worse than expected. So I think that's part of the reason for this spread, but I don't like it. It sits too high for me. I feel like that halftime line's, slightly better. If you were going to bet on this game, I feel like you probably had to roll with that halftime one. I just don't trust the Colts. Even though I like the Colts, I just don't trust them enough to really pick him as a 10-point favorite.
Yeah, I was going to mention that first half sitting at 4.5. A little bit off on that 10-point total. So, you get about a half point of value there at the, 4.5 total. I figure if the Colts are going to blow them out, they will have to get off to a good start in the first half. Otherwise, they aren't, even getting near that 10-point spread. You did see probably Carson Wentz's best football game in, I don't know, 2 or 3 years last week. Jonathan Taylor sort of got going. He had a lot of, he had 2 big pass catches for long yardage. Still sort of iffy on the run game, only about 10 carries, 50 yards, but at least his total yards were up there. Pittman looked good last week. The defense looked better for the Colts last week. I don't know how much you factor in them playing Miami. That can make a lot of defenses look much better. So do you think the Colts can cover this 10? Would you be bullish on taking that first half 4.5? I think there is value there in that first half 4.5 line.
Yeah, I honestly, listen, do I think that they can cover that 10-point spread? I think they can, but how confident am I? Not much at all, not enough to even put my lunch money on it. But that 4.5, I think, it sits right in the middle to where I could totally see, the Colts going into the halftime up by a touchdown here in this one. So, I mean, if you feel comfortable with that halftime one, that's something that I might consider.
All right, so let's mark that down. First half, 4.5 for the Indianapolis Colts. Our first actual mutual here. Texans coming off a decent performance versus the New England Patriots. The offense looked somewhat okay. Do you think that was a little bit more a look at of what the Patriots did, or do you think the Texans will be able to replicate that? Because the previous 3 games before that, they basically had no offense at all. And, if you look in that fourth quarter, New England shut them down and they weren't able to move the ball anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We always talk about the New England Patriots and their defense and Bill Belichick, how great he is at coming up with defensive schemes for the opposing team. But, they looked pretty flat last week. As you mentioned, until the fourth quarter when they, really stepped up their game. But I don't know. I don't know if this was a result of them just kind of overlooking the Texans or if this was the Texans trying to make a statement. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this team. I was really excited about them when the season started, and then they started getting plagued by injuries. And now I'm kind of like, it seems like the magic is fading, and I don't really know where they stand right now. I mean, they're bad, but I don't know how bad they are.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, so we'll ride the Colts there. First half -4.5, and maybe we'll believe in Davis Mills if he can put 2 games back-to-back together there.
Yeah.
All right, next up, this is going to be tough for you. The War of Worlds here. The West Coast team meets the East Coast team for our man Achilles Rain. The Los Angeles Rams go to the New York Giants. The Rams are 9.5-point road favorites here. The total sits at 4.5, and they don't want you cheating and taking the Rams in the first half. That total sits at -6.5, so only 3 points off from what the overall spread is. The total sits at 24.5 here. It's really hard to sort of handicap this game because, I don't even think we need to discuss who we think's going to win this game. With what the Giants are going to put out on the field, it would take a whole lot of very bad play from the Rams to lose this one. You just got to sort of dive into the number. Can the Rams cover this 9.5? Do you think the Giants have enough life to cover that 9.5, taking them an underdog? I was sort of a automatic cross off on this. The only thing I sort of looked at was maybe a first half total over of 24.5, but even that, I don't know if the Giants can score enough points to get there, because I figure Los Angeles could probably get to about 17-20, but then you're asking points from the Giants, and I don't know if we can get that with that team on the field there. So what do you make of this game?
Yeah, when I was first looking at this particular matchup, the first thing that I looked at was the spread, and I was like, okay, I'm moving past that spread. And I went up to the over-under, and that same thought crept into my mind was, can the Giants put up any points? I think they're going to have a really hard time, especially with what they're going to put out on the field. They're dealing with a lot of injuries right now, and you're talking about, one of those defensive fronts that can completely shatter a team's wishes and hopes and dreams, in the split second. Now, Aaron Donald was limited in practice. He had a bit of an issue with one of his knees in the previous week where he got kind of banged up with another player and he had some swelling, so he didn't practice, but he's still expected to play. And as long as that guy's on the field, you can believe that he's going to affect the game in one way or another. Looking at this matchup, I don't think it's so much about can they win, how many points can they win for. I think this is more about like Matthew Stafford and the offense kind of getting back into rhythm the way they started off the season where they were really, really hot. They seem to have slowed down a little bit. Matthew Stafford seems to have taken a step back over the last couple of weeks. So this is a perfect opportunity for him to kind of get going again. And when I was looking at the numbers right now, I know that it opened at the Rams -9.5. It's actually shifted a little bit. I think the Rams are -8.5 now. So there's a tiny bit of value there added onto it. I mean,
have
not
you
too
been
much.
betting on the Giants in your off time?
No, not for this matchup.
Did you move that line by a whole point? What have you
No.
been betting on the Giants?
No, not me. But actually, I think that this is a feel-good game for the Rams. I know it's a really high spread, and I would never recommend for anybody to take a spread this high, especially on the road. But I think that this is going to be just me personally. This is something that I'm doing. I think this is a feel good moment for the Rams, is to kind of get back on track on offense. And I think this is going to be a blowout. So I'm actually taking the Rams -9.5, but I wouldn't recommend it. This is just, crazy fanatic talk.
Yeah. I would really like to take this, but everybody is going to be on this. Everybody's going to have seen the game last week, as the Giants just got everybody hurt and the Cowboys just started piling on points there for fun. They're going to think the Rams are going to do the same thing here. I mean, the money there is 72% tickets to the Rams. 76% of the money is on the Rams here. So everything's going Rams' way. So that sort of scares me off of it a little bit. The other thing I was going to ask you, you mentioned Donald nicked up a little bit on the injury list. I mean, I know this isn't an NBA season and you don't sort of rest guys, but he's so important to that defense, and it's not gotten off to I think as dominant a start as we were. Would you have? I just feel like if he's nicked at all, and you see what the Giants are going to put out there, I feel like you sort of sit him, make sure he's right, because this game in the grand scheme of the football season really isn't going to factor into the football season at all. The Rams can go in there and win with or without Aaron Donald, with what the Giants have going on out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I would think, they're a much better team on paper, both on defense and on offense, and especially when you consider all these injuries. Now, the only thing I could think of, I personally, if I was the head coach, I'm sitting Aaron Donald if he's, ailing at anything. Doesn't matter what, a finger or, he clipped one of his, hairs too short or whatever. Doesn't matter. I would sit him. But obviously I'm not a coach. And the only thing I could think is that this injury can't be that serious enough to where they're concerned about his long-term healing. But another thing is we also have to take into account, a lot of these players, especially on the defense side of the ball, their contracts are very incentivized. So, whether it's how many games in a row he's played or, how he affects the game with pressures, quarterback hits, things of that sort, tackles, all these things are really important to some of these guys for bonuses and things like that. So I just assume if he's playing and they're not keeping him out in a game that probably doesn't have a lot of meaning. Obviously you want to get the win, but it doesn't have a lot of meaning because you could pretty much beat them without Aaron Donald. So I just think injury can't be that bad, and he must really want to play.
Yeah, I didn't say he would gladly agree to this sit out. You'd probably have to lock him in a room somewhere that has very thick walls if he deems himself healthy to play, and you aren't letting him go out there. Easy game or not. So we'll probably pass on this one. We don't throw out a lot of 9.5 point spreads. Certainly not a lot of 9.5 point road spreads.
No.
The totals, you probably could maybe convince me more on an underside of some of, especially that 48.5. But that being said, if the Rams, like you said, do use this game to sort of find some rhythm on offense, if this game gets out of hand early, they might just start throwing up points like the Cowboys did in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that's kind of, my only reason. I did look at the under, and I was considering it. It was very tempting just because, like we said, I don't think the Giants will be able to score that many points. But we saw what the Cowboys did to them last week. I had the under in that one, and it was looking really good after that first half. And then the game completely turned around and it was over. So it's probably the only reason why I stayed away from it.
Yeah, that being said, also, Glennon, a little turnover prone. So the Rams haven't created a ton of turnovers this year, but if there's a game they're going to get some, it'd probably be this one. All right.
I will say, before we move on, I will say really quick, if you were ever going to bet on a defensive touchdown, this would be a good candidate for that.
I have one coming up that I think might be a good one to go after the defensive touchdown as well. All right, let's move on here. Kansas City Chiefs at the Washington football team. Kansas City's a 6.5 point road favorite here. Total sits at 54.5. First half total sits at 3.5 for the Chiefs. Total sits at 27. And I know the Chiefs haven't covered a lot this season, one time and two times in the past 16 games here. But quite honestly, with what's gone on in Washington, somehow an email scandal has overtaken the DEA scandal that is also going on there. So I just think Washington, we've seen that defense play really, really poor. Yeah, this game will probably be a little bit of a shootout, but I look at it more like that Eagles game that the Chiefs had 2 weeks ago. I think the Chiefs go in here, light this Washington football team up, and easily win this game here.
Yeah, I had a similar type of feeling, but I figured I would wait and see if you could sell me on this. I didn't have it picked as one of my games, but I had a circle as one of my maybes. And I figured that you'd probably talk me into it. I just, as you mentioned, the whole scandal going on with Washington right now, the defense hasn't been playing to the level that we expected them to play. And obviously they had injuries on offense that have kind of slowed down their offensive attack. So I know that the Chiefs defense is very porous and they give up a lot of big plays and a lot of yards and a lot of points, but I just don't see how the Washington football team defense can contain. They can't stop the Kansas City offense, but I don't even see how they can contain him.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs easily get 40 here. So that becomes, how many points do you think the Washingtons score? And even on this porous Chief teams, I don't think Washington could get over 30. They might hit in and around 30 if a lot of things go right. I
think that's being generous.
Yeah, and that being said, Gibson's probably going to play, but he's been banged up for a couple weeks now. He hasn't looked totally right, at least running the ball. So I just think this, the Chiefs season probably starts to turn around here. I know their record looks bad, but if you look at their opponents they have played, it's literally like the top teams in football. So the record looks bad at 2-3 from what you've seen from the Kansas City Chiefs, but overall, I mean, they open with the Browns, then go to Baltimore, then play the Chargers, get that win versus Philly, then play Buffalo. I mean, if you were saying what are the 6 best teams in the league, you throw Buffalo in there, you throw the Chargers in there, you throw Baltimore in there, you throw Cleveland in there. So they have 2 wins over teams that one who is probably a top 6 team and one who isn't, and they have really, really close losses other to that Buffalo one. That Baltimore game, Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't fumble. They kick the game-winning field goal. Game over, Chiefs win. Chargers, same sort of story. They are forced to go for it on a 4th and 9 on the 50-yard line so they don't give that ball back to the Kansas City Chiefs, knowing if they give the ball back to the Chiefs, they're going to go down and score. The record it looks bad, but I think this Chiefs team is about to go on a little bit of a stretch here. Washington, then they have Tennessee, the Giants, Green Bay, Las Vegas. So I think they start to get more in rhythm here, and I look for the offense to sort of find himself and roll Washington, who are 2-3, but I just haven't thought they've really played all that well all season long. That Giants game, they got that offsides on the field goal that gave them a win, which probably should have been a loss. You have that Atlanta win, which let's just say ick. That game was either way. They had a tough time with the Saints last week. I look for the Chiefs to go in there and cover it. If New Orleans beats them by 10 points, I think the Chiefs can beat them by 7 points here.
Okay, so I'm assuming that's we're putting it down as one of our mutuals.
We're going to put it down as one of our mutuals. Kansas City Chiefs -6.5. We can go first half -3.5, but I'm a little hesitant to do that on the Chiefs since they've essentially been slow starters since about 3 years ago.
Yeah, and we know that offensively they really like to kind of, keep it close to the vest till you get to that second half, which is when they really turn it on offensively.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, you were mentioning defensive scores. The Minnesota Vikings go to the Carolina Panthers here. Somehow McCaffrey sort of re-injured himself this week, so he's going to be out. I had this, highlighted early in the week as one of the games I really, really liked. But now I'm totally off it. So Minnesota, 2-point favorites. Total sits at 45.5. First half is even money, a half point towards the Minnesota Vikings. Total sits at 23. Honestly, I don't know what to expect here. Minnesota has looked really, really poor on offense. Probably should have lost that Detroit game last week. And Carolina, as much as I love this defense, and I think it's one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL, I'm out until we see Christian McCaffrey come back. You saw it last week. Robbie Anderson started to get a little frustrated. I think some of the receivers are starting to get a little frustrated. You're starting to see the cracks in Sam Darnold's game, and I just can't take this Carolina team as much as I like them, and I think their defense is legit and elite. You saw it last week where that defense just dominated the Eagles, and Sam Darnold could not get them the requisite points to put that game away and win it pretty easy. And then Vikings on the road as favorites. You will never, probably ever in my lifetime, get me to take the Minnesota Vikings as road favorites as long as Mr. Cousins is playing quarterback there. So what do you make of this one?
Yeah, I really have no feel for this game. As you mentioned, with the injury to McCaffrey, it really puts a damper on that offense and how well they can move the ball. Defensively, same as you, I really like this team, and I like the Panthers in general. I'm not a huge Sam Darnold fan. I'm not a huge Sam Darnold believer. He started to kind of turn it around for me early on the season, but obviously that was a lot. Because a lot of it was due to the fact that they had a healthy McCaffrey early on. Once he went down, it really changed the way this team was pivoting it, and now it seems to be on a downward trend. And mostly because of the play of the quarterback, which is very unfortunate because, a lot of people really thought that this was going to be a breakout year for him once he left the Jets and he had a more solid team around him. But McCaffrey, he's the heart of that team. And without him, you really see the effect it has. So I'm probably going to stay away from this game. I don't know how to handicap it out, so I'm just going to stay away.
The thing I had highlighted on my picks was the total here at 45.5. I kind of like that under, especially from what we've seen from the Vikings, the last 2 weeks. Now, Dalvin Cook is theoretically supposed to play. Now, we've heard that a couple times before, and then, Alexander Madison comes in there. But Cook is much better than Madison, but they don't, the drop-off isn't something where I'd be like, oh, no, the Vikings can't run the ball now that Dalvin Cook's out. If Madison's in there, they can run the ball. Basically, it was the whole reason they scored points last week. Also, kind of why they almost blew that game because he fumbled there at the end, trying to get extra yardage for some reason while they were trying to run the clock. The total seems like, from what we've seen from this Minnesota Vikings offense the last couple weeks, what we saw from them versus the Cleveland Browns, I think this Carolina defense is similar. And then you mentioned it, Carolina's offense has struggled ever since McCaffrey's gone out. The only thing that would give me pause on that under was you are hovering around to quarterbacks who aren't huge in pressure and tend to turn the ball over when they see the slightest hint of a pass rush. And that could be defensive points there, which can sort of be funny with your total there. Any love in that total of 45.5 on that under?
I looked at it for a little bit, but, as much as I love this Carolina Panthers defense, and I do think that they're really good, we've seen the Minnesota offense at one point or another, play really, really well, enough to really put a good defensive team on its heels. And I would hate for this to be one of those situations where I take the under on this one and
Yeah.
the Minnesota offense is just clicking and the Carolina defense is having a bad game. I would just hate for a moment like that to happen. So it's probably one of the reasons why I just stayed away from
Yeah,
both.
I see it. We get that random game where Cook's running the ball, the play action is hitting, and they're getting the deep passes. And, then all of a sudden Carolina's winging the ball over the field, the porous Minnesota defense. Though I will say it has played a little bit better the last couple weeks. Now, once again, the offenses they've played might have factored into the defense being a little bit better, but I don't think the Carolina Panthers are one of those teams that can really challenge it all that much as well. So we'll leave that alone and move on to our next game. Probably the best game in the NFL slate this week. Los Angeles Chargers go to the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens sit as a 2.5-point favorite here. The total sits at 51. The first half sits at 2.5. Total sits at 24. I think some people, not me necessarily, were a little bit surprised that Baltimore gets the nod here as the favorite team. But I think the Chargers going cross country here. The Ravens, yes, they've struggled in some games, but I'm not quite ready to announce the Chargers as a team capable necessarily of going across the country, beating a team that we both hold in high regard in the Baltimore Ravens and having them be favorites. So what's your take on this game? What do you think this line is? Or is it a cross-off for you?
Well, for most of the games, when I'm trying to do my own, not that I do my own lines, but when I try to kind of guess what the line's going to be, I tend to give home teams a 3-point advantage just to start off. So when I saw this 2.5, I was like, okay, it kind of makes sense. The Chargers have been playing really good football lately. Their defense isn't really shutting people down, but their offense is playing so good that they're doing enough to not put too much pressure on the defense. Baltimore has had its moments where it struggled. You go back to the Detroit game, for example, a game that a lot of people really expect them to kind of dominate, and they almost lost that game. To me, this is more of one of those games where I'm just going to sit back and enjoy a good football game between two good teams. Because I really know which way it's going to go. Baltimore defensively, they can really show up and really cause some problems on offense. It seems like the passing game has really kind of picked up over the last couple of games, especially when you compare it to last season, where it seems like the wide receivers really weren't producing as much as you would expect them to. You got Brown, who's kind of been putting up some decent numbers out there. And I just think this is a more entertaining game to watch as opposed to bet on. I don't think I'm going to take any action on this just because I don't know which team is better. I do think both teams are really good. I just don't know which one's better. That's my issue.
Yeah, I'm coming from this in a couple different ways. I'm trying to piece together if I can find value in here. You know how I like those low lines where I can just sort of pick a winner and move on, and I don't have to worry about weird things going on in the back end of games here. You mentioned this Chargers team. It's ranked 31st in rush defense, in normal stats and in analytic stats. The one team that is below it is the Kansas City Chiefs, who are historically bad so far this season at stopping the run. So basically, the Chargers are the worst run defense in the league. You match that up versus the Baltimore Ravens, that makes me very, very nervous. You have a team who can literally just dominate you with the run. You saw it last week in that Cleveland game. I don't want to say that game was a fluke, but if you watched it, the time of possession, I believe the Chargers had 20 minutes of total football, where the Browns had the ball the whole game. Chubb and Hunt basically could have run for a first down pretty much every down there. So that makes me nervous on that side of things. The thing that makes me a little bit nervous on the other side of things here is Sammy Watkins is out for the Baltimore Ravens. And yes, his numbers haven't been there, but at least when you can put Sammy Watkins and, Marquise Brown and then Mark Andrews up there, you at least have to guard those guys and respect those guys. So if Watkins is out, it weakens them a little bit. It's more like last year's team where, you have Marquise Brown going deep. You have Mark Andrews underneath. Now, they did activate their first-round rookie, Rashard Bateman, but I don't quite know what you're going to get from him. He didn't really play in training camp. He hasn't played all season long. I'm not looking at that as, really something where I'm like, oh, they're going to respect him. He's going to be able to have a big game. I think that's sort of a more ease on in there. Now, they have not had a receiver sort of like him, big, fast, but I don't think game one is where you sort of see maybe them having the advantage there. So, I like the matchup Baltimore rush-wise, but without those receivers there, it makes me a little bit more cautious if we're going back to just, Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, and also another thing to consider, a West team traveling east for an early game. If this was a later game, an afternoon game, or a Sunday night game, maybe I'd take a little more consideration in picking one of these teams. But to me, this just has all the recipes for a letdown, and I don't want to be part of it. So I'm going to stay away from it. As you mentioned, I know that they activate their young wide receiver, but just, based off him not getting any play time, him not really playing, during preseason and all that, to me, it seems like he might get a few snaps to kind of see what he can do, see if he can make a play while he's out there. But I don't think he's going to be out there for the entire game to really impact it that much. And if he does, I mean, great for him and great for his team, but I just don't see it happening this game.
Yeah, I would be shocked if he had any more than, a sort of very small package of, set plays to sort of have any impact on this. So, yeah. I wish
that I really had a feel for one of those teams, because I love these 2.5 point spreads.
Yeah.
These are my favorite type of spreads to pick.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I just don't have a feel for it.
I'm just not quite ready to go Chargers cross country on the road here. I want to see that offense sort of travel into a place like Baltimore and light them up. I know that offense is really, really good. It's probably one of the top 3 offenses in the league, but lighting up the Chiefs, lighting up the Browns at home, lighting up the Cowboys is different than going into Baltimore and lighting them up. And if you can't control Baltimore's run game, you might not even have the ball enough, like you saw in that Cleveland game. Basically, they had to play perfect, which they did, but asking a team to play perfect on offense every week, week to week, is not something you're going to get every week.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we'll move to this game. My guess is the number has changed since the Nick Chubb news came out. But when I send it to you, Arizona versus Cleveland. Cleveland is 3.5 point favorites. Total sits at 49 here. First half sits at 2.5. Total sits at 24.5. Now, I will say I was really big on Cleveland here on about Tuesday, Wednesday. Chubb news comes in. I'm a little bit more cautious. I'm not quite as big on this. I guess Arizona keeps living right somehow. So they go to Cleveland, their first probably real big, true road test across the country, and Chubb's not playing. Now, yes, they do have Kareem Hunt, who's a really good running back, but Chubb, I consider one of the best running backs in the league, and I think Cleveland really, really loses something there. And you saw it once again in this game. If it's not Chubb or Hunt, they seem to have a little bit of trouble passing. Yeah, they had a couple big plays to the tight end, Njoku, but I don't look for that to be a trend that continues very much. And I just think that hurts Cleveland a little bit here without Nick Chubb. It makes me sort of scared to take this game one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Hunt is a really good back. We've seen him, carry a team as the main weapon in the backfield. But in this team, he's definitely more of a change of pace back. You got Nick Chubb, who's more of the bruiser, the guy who you can keep back there, for 3 downs in a row and just kind of pound that defensive line. And I could see why you like the Browns in this one. They're at home, and they get the benefit of having the team that's considered to be the best team in the NFL right now. Kind of they have the underdog mentality, but as you mentioned, with the whole Nick Chubb injury and the way Arizona's been playing and getting points, I kind of like Arizona in this one.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I pulled way off my Cleveland thing. I don't even have them in my picks now.
Now, I will tell you, the number hasn't changed since.
It hasn't not. Is it still 3.5?
Still 3.5.
That really makes me push towards wanting to take Arizona. Wouldn't that be the life? We take Arizona and they finally throw out the dud.
I mean, it might be the kryptonite that they need is for us to take Arizona, and then it'll change their fortunes.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I'm looking up the number right now. You're right. It still sits at 3.5. They've only lowered the juice a little bit, so I don't think it's probably going to move a whole lot. Maybe down to 3. How bullish are you on this Arizona theme? Do you? Oh, I forgot. Kingsbury's out because he has COVID.
Oh, that might be a good thing, though.
Yeah, that's true. That might be a good thing. All right. So, yeah, I just remembered reading that last night. So, Kingsbury out with COVID, Chubb out because he's banged up. That's
probably why the line didn't change.
Yeah, that's probably a sign we should move past this game, watch and discuss on Tuesday how the game played out, and probably not lay a bet on this puppy.
Yeah, we're better off, I think.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, so that'll be interesting. Next up, if you are betting on this game, you probably have some severe gambling problems here. The Las Vegas Raiders go to the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are 4-point favorites here. Total sits at 44. First half sits at -3. Total sits at 21.5. I don't even quite know how to handicap this one. Denver's been really sort of bad since they've actually had to play real NFL level football teams, and I just have no clue what I'm getting from the Las Vegas Raiders. Certainly Las Vegas Raiders traveling on the road to Denver Broncos. I mean, I figure this can go either way. We either get inspired performance where they galvanize together and sort of play off emotion and adrenaline and dominate this game, or we get that dud that we got last week where they play just lifeless, worthless football, and the Chicago Bears can go in there, generate no offense, and win the game pretty easily. So how do you see this game playing out? I guess you maybe could convince me that the Raiders are going to no-show, and we got a nice little spot here with Denver at -4, but I want no part of Denver until I see them beat a actual football team here.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, we both were, really, really supportive of the Broncos and the way they were building that team. We've stated since last season that all they really needed was, some sort of quarterback to really kind of bolster that team into at least playoff contention. And it's kind of where I still stand right now. I still think that defense can be elite. Obviously, they haven't really shown it so far, but I think they have the potential to be. Now, they are missing some weapons on offense. Obviously, they got injuries to the wide receiver position, the quarterback position. What was the line opening at? Right now it sits at -4 for the Broncos.
Yeah, it sits at 4. I can check what it opened at. I think it probably was a little bit off because I think when it opened, John Gruden hadn't stepped down quite yet. The line opened at 3 for the Broncos, so it's gone up a point.
So my thing, I'm not a biology major and I'm not an expert in, human anatomy or anything, but whichever part of the brain does the logical thinking is telling me the Raiders are going to unite. They're going to come together and they're going to play the way that they pretty much started the season. And then the creative side of my brain is saying, like, come on, dude, think about it. There's no way with all the drama going on. they're not going to do anything. They're just going to completely fold. And I don't know which side of my brain to trust, which is probably a good thing. This is not a brain you normally want to trust. But with that being said, I don't know. I just think this is a game I'm just going to stay away from. I don't have a good feeling about the Broncos team, the way they've been playing lately. As much as I like them, I don't have a good feeling about them. And this Raider team, with all the drama going on with Coach Gruden and the leaked emails and all that, I'm just staying away from this one.
Yeah, I think this is just a stay away, and we come back and fight another game. We'll see if Las Vegas has any heart. I think probably later on in the season, we could probably pick up the pieces here and start betting against the Las Vegas Raiders, because I think there's too much potential that they play with a little bit of extra juice this week. And then, 3 or 4 weeks down the road, that juice sort of leaves them. They can't just play on emotion. And then they come back down to earth a little bit, and we can sort of take advantage of it. But certainly, I just don't trust enough of the Broncos here. So we'll move on past that game and move to the Dallas Cowboys going to the New England Patriots. Cowboys 3.5-point favorites in this game. Total sits at 50.5. First half sits at 2.5. Total sits at 24 here. This looks like an easy one on paper. I'm guessing you're probably going to try to convince me to ride the Cowboys here, especially since I've probably been the one that's hammered New England.
How much you love them.
Yeah, so much this year, and actually gotten pretty good value in taking against New England and riding sort of their over love, especially early when they were being favored in every game. They are getting points in this one, which I like a little bit better for New England. I'm probably a pass overall in this game. What do you think of this game?
The way that the New England Patriots defense played last week, as I mentioned earlier, we give a lot of credit to that defense and Bill Belichick in general with his defensive schemes, and rightfully so, because normally he puts out good defenses. Either that, or even if it's not a good defense, he'll put together a good game plan and a good scheme for the opposing offense. So this is one of the reasons why we give him so much credit. But last week against Houston, they really didn't show it so much till the fourth quarter. And it kind of made me think maybe we're overselling the Patriots defense. And I still feel that way this week. Now, I don't want the wife to hear me say that because she'll probably make me sleep in the living room. But
it's a comfy couch.
It is a comfy couch. I do have that going for me. But I do think that the defense for the Patriots, it really isn't as good as we made him out to be. And with that being the case, as potent as the Cowboys offense has been, you mentioned that last week about how you actually think this team's actually a lot better than we give them credit for. And I agree with you. They probably are a lot better than we give them credit for. They've got playmakers on defense now that are not just making plays, but they're causing turnovers and they're stopping teams when they have to stop teams. And on offense, you've seen what they can do on any given Sunday. They can go off for 50. So, 3.5, I don't think it's really, that far-fetched to assume that this Cowboy team could beat the Patriots by at least 2 field goals. I don't think it's very far-fetched. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to think that this offense is going to be rolling. And if the New England defense plays the way they played last week versus Houston, I don't see how anyone doesn't consider the Cowboys offense to be better than Houston's offense. So I kind of like the Cowboys here at minus 3.5.
Yeah, definitely so. I figured you'd try to convince me. I didn't need all that convincing, but it's just...
We do only have 2 games.
Yeah, all the money is coming in on the Dallas Cowboys, which is what gives me pause. I got to fight that 77% of the tickets, 68% of the cash for the Cowboys. It's just one of those things. Everybody is zigging. I want to automatically zag. And sometimes you got to fight that urge to be like, zag here. No, I mean, you look at these numbers and the New England offense is ranked 24 in total DVOA, where the Dallas defense is ranked 6. And then you start to look and be like, oh, well, maybe the Dallas defense isn't. The Dallas defense is ranked, 4 on this side of things. So the Dallas defense has actually been better than the New England defense. And, the Dallas offense is the number 3 ranked offense in football right now. So sometimes you just got to say, yeah, this game looks like it's going to be a mismatch on paper. But then you start looking at betting totals and you're like, I want to zag. But sometimes you just got to ride with everybody else and be like, this game's going to be a mismatch and a
Zig
blowout.
with me, baby.
Yeah.
Zig with me.
So we'll ride with the people here. We're going to go with the people. And we're going to take the Dallas Cowboys as our, I believe this is our 3rd mutual pick of the program. So the Dallas Cowboys, road favorites in New England, -3.5. This has disaster written all over it. I know a special work friend is not going to like that we have decided to mutually agree upon taking Dallas at -3.5 on the road. All right, next up, Seattle Seahawks. First, the Pittsburgh Steelers. 5.5-point favorites here. Total sits at 43.5. First half sits at 3, and the total sits at 21 here. All right, so no Geno Smith, no Chris Carson. Both went on IR. That leaves Alex Collins and Geno Smith.
You mean no Russell Wilson?
No, what did I say?
You said Geno Smith.
Oh, Geno. That would have been okay. No Geno Smith would have been okay.
Hey, at least it's better than what I said a couple weeks ago, Russell Westbrook. So, at least you're on the same team.
Yes, I am on the same team. Same depth chart, just the wrong
Same
guy on
sport.
IR. So no Russell Wilson on IR, no Chris Carson on IR. Steelers, 5.5-point favorites. Now, I talked about wanting to zig when everybody's zagging here, and I'm going to do that this week. I want the Seahawks in this one. Now, hear me out here. Once again, this Pittsburgh team played solid for about 3 quarters versus the Denver Broncos and then let the Denver Broncos back in this game. So I don't think they're capable of winning like a big spread like this at 5.5. The other thing I think here, I think with Geno Smith there, they'd sort of shifted away from Chris Carson anyway and started giving Alex Collins the carries. I think we go back to old school Seattle here. Seattle when Russell Wilson was back there playing quarterback, and he was sort of more a game manager than a guy who sort of dominated the game. Old school Seattle team, they just pound the run with a really powerful big back in Alex Collins. A powerhouse of a back who's quite similar to a sort of Marshawn Lynch character. And I think maybe we get an old school type Seahawks performance here. A lot of grounded pound, and maybe that defense comes around when it needs to step up. And we get sort of a defensive, ugly, close game in this one.
See, my concern with that, and I get where you're coming from,
is that Geno Smith eventually has to pass the ball.
Well, that, and at some point you also have to take into account that the Steelers' defense can be good. I'm not saying they've been playing really good, but they can be good. They've got all the players to really make an impact, and you also have to take into account. I know that Geno Smith is NFL quarterback, and he's had his fair share of trials and tribulations. But one of the reasons why, even when Seattle looks horrible on defense and they have no running game, one of the reasons why I tend to always side with Seattle is because they had that magic. And no, I'm not talking about Fitz magic. I'm talking about Russell magic. He can make things happen that very few quarterbacks can make. And without him on the field, I don't know. It really dampers my confidence in the Seattle Seahawks to win a game against just about anybody. Now, obviously, their record isn't that great. They've played some really tough teams, and their defense has just been really bad. So let's just put that out there. I don't know. I mean, if you feel that strong about it, I know we're getting points. As it sits right now, the line shifted a little bit. Seattle is actually getting 5 points right now. So if you feel like taking it, I'll take it with you. But I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. I'll take it if you're really confident about it, but that's about it.
All right, I think we'll pass. The only thing here is I think both teams will sort of want to ground and pound and keep this game close. So I think that five number is a little bit too big. I'm not saying Seattle's going to go in there and win, but I do think this will be a tight, close game because I don't think
I could see that.
either team offensively is really going to want to expose themselves too much. But maybe the Steelers found something last week and are on a roll. That being said, Juju Smith-Schuster is out. Now, that's not huge because they do have a lot of depth there at in wide receivers at Pittsburgh, but it is something. Anytime you take one of their top receivers, everybody moves up a peg. Maybe they aren't quite as good, but we can pass on this one, and I'll just have it in my picks and text you each time Geno Smith hits that big play.
Yeah, you'll be texting me a lot then.
All right, next up, the Monday night game. The Buffalo Bills go to the Tennessee Titans. Buffalo Bills are 5.5-point favorites here. Total sits at 52.5. First half total is -1.5. Total sits at 26.5. Interesting game here. Tennessee went into Buffalo last year, won that game. Now, that was one of those weird COVID games where Buffalo, I think, had played 3 games in 4 days and had the Chiefs coming up on like a Thursday or a Saturday or something weird. So Buffalo coming off a big, big win versus Kansas City. Now, that being said, Buffalo has annihilated basically everybody they've played since that opening game versus the Steelers. What do you make of this game?
Yeah, I didn't want to come out and just say it. And so I'll say that I'll start off by saying this. Derrick Henry's having a really good year. Okay, now here I go. I think they're going to get killed. I think that Titans defense just cannot keep up with this Bills offense. This Bills offense has looked amazing so far, other than that first game of the year. But even in that game, they at least made it somewhat competitive. I just don't see, with maybe Julio Jones is coming back this week and maybe, Brown plays and it gives the Titans a little bit of a chance on offense. But the way this Bills offense has just kind of been rolling, it's hard to really keep up with them. And normally I would say that about the Titans offense, going back to last season, even previous seasons, before that, the Titans offense has been one of the best offenses, one of the most well-rounded offenses in the NFL. And it seems like this season, even though Henry's having a really good year, the passing game hasn't quite been what we're used to seeing. I know there has some departures during the offseason, but, you talk about a guy like Julio Jones. I know he's very fragile. He's like glass. But when he's on the field, he's a big dude and he can make some big plays happen. So you'd expect not that much of a drop-off. But, I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I'm sure if we go back and we look at the numbers through, 5 weeks, their passing game has to be down, at least in my opinion. I think the Bills are going to win this game. I just don't know if I trust it enough. Maybe, the Titans offense shows up and it becomes a shootout. Last person hold the ball wins. I just don't know. But it might be a really entertaining game if both offenses show up.
Yeah, the thing with that is, the Buffalo defense has been ridiculously good to the point where pretty much every metric site has them as the number 1 defense so far this year. Now, some of that has been, who they've played, but, they played the Chiefs last week and they held them under 20 points. Now, you shut down.
No easy feat.
Yeah, you shut down some of the poorer teams, the Miamis, the Houston Texans. Now, they really shut them down by pitching shutouts, and I don't care what team it is. If you're shutting down professional teams with 0 points, that's a big deal. Porous offenses or not, they're still professional players on the other side of the field. So when you have shutouts like that, and then it really proved to me last week versus the Chiefs, when you hold the Chiefs under 20, you're doing something really, really special. So I think that defense is on a legit level of being a top-tier defense once again. You mentioned the offense. They had that sort of porous game to open the season, but since then, they've been in cruise control with what they've been able to do. And they can sort of pick you apart right now on the ground or through the air. They can hit you deep, or they can play, a little possession game with Sanders and the tight end and Cole Beasley. They can hit you over the top with Stephon Diggs. The Bills right now are just a ridiculous team playing great, great football. Now, that doesn't mean too much in week 6. They need to be playing great, great football in week 20. But right now, every once in a while, you get these teams that just dominate through the regular season. The Rams have had a couple teams like that. That team 3 or 4 years ago with Jared Goff that ended up making it to the Super Bowl. That Kurt Warner team, that first iteration, where basically they covered every game of the season until about the 15th game of the season, and they were just annihilating teams. You had that New England team in 2008 when Moss first got there. You had a couple of those early Peyton Indianapolis Colts teams. Occasionally you get that team that just blows everybody out in the regular season. And I think this might be one of those teams in the Buffalo Bills. So yes, 5.5 points at the Titans is a scary spread, especially with the Bills having blown pretty much everybody out. But I'm just going to ride the Bills at 5.5 until they prove that they can even play a close game. You knock that Pittsburgh game off. They've won by 35 points, 42 points, 18 points, and 24 points. They are just crushing teams right now. And, despite the memes that your friend Dynamite David sends us about the great defensive players on the Tennessee Titans, apparently they're all good playing solo defense and not team defense, because their total DVOA ranks number 27. And then you mentioned it. The offense right now is 21st in total DVOA. This Titans team overall is 26. Yes, they've gotten wins, but they have not gotten good wins so far. And I think you can just look back to that first game of the season versus Arizona, and Arizona just putting it on them both defensively and offensively. The Titans have not been able to block. The Bills have the best pass rush in the game. The Titans have not been able to defend. Buffalo has one of the best offenses in the game. I think this is, once again, just a recipe for a blowout. I think Bills 5.5. We ride it, and until the Bills cool off, you ride the Bills.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, just a quick peek. That the Bills. I had them on my thing. I was kind of hoping that you were on the same boat with me. But yeah, I think we're going to put that down as our fourth mutual, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think Bills minus 5.5, our fourth mutual. It also helped that the aforementioned Dynamite was sending memes about how great the Tennessee Titans defense has been this year. I don't know what games he's been watching, but maybe they were from the early 2000s with those Tennessee Titans teams. But I don't think he's been paying attention this season because the defense is not that good.
I just have to say, I'm so glad that my team is playing decent football, at least decent enough that you can't just pile on me like you pile on him, because it's quite funny to just see the reactions go back and forth, to be honest with you.
Well, yes, but you don't come into work gloating about how great the backup tight end has been for the Los Angeles Rams.
Let's just move on.
All right, next up. We got to find one more. I think we had Green Bay in there minus the 5.5. We had Colts minus 4.5 first half. Did we take that one as one of our mutuals, or was that in the back pocket?
It was in the back pocket, and I believe the other one was the Lions at plus 3.5.
Yeah, Lions plus 3.5. So which of those do you like there?
I was kind of iffy about all those. I kind of like the Packers one, but I know you weren't too crazy about it, so I'll let you pick this last one. That puts us with a
lot of road teams there. Why don't we ride the home?
That's always scary.
Yeah. Let's have some fun. Let's ride the Lions at the plus 3.5. Let's go with a home team getting points. We've broken pretty much all our NFL rules before that, so we'll just take a home dog so we stay within our NFL rules. Granted,
what I like about
this is
the
Lions. Go Cephas.
What I like about this is that you're taking the Lions. for me. I don't have to say it publicly. So now if they win, I'm going to feel so good about myself, but if they lose, I'm like, yeah, you took him. It wasn't me.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. We're going to both get Cephas jerseys if the Lions win this game.
Okay, you're paying, though.
I do have the freebie that Caesar Sports got us for a free jersey. Though, technically speaking, Cephas got hurt last week, and he's on the IR. But that being said, I don't think I know another one of their receivers. So I couldn't go that deep on the
Not off the top of my head. Not off the top of my head.
They have the weird 3-named guy, but I don't remember his name.
Well, he's got 3, so it's hard to remember it.
St. Brown. It's something St. Brown. I just know that.
That's good enough already. That alone right there.
So we're writing St. Brown as our number 1 receiver here. I'm not sure he will be on the team next year, but hey. Lions plus 3.5. All right, so what 5 did we end up with the mutuals there? Bills.
Okay, I've got them written.
We took Cowboys. We took. What else do we got going on?
I've got them written down right here. So we've got the Colts minus 4.5 for the first half.
Yeah.
We have the Kansas City Chiefs at minus 6.5. We have the Cowboys at minus 3.5. The Bills at minus 5.5. And the Lions at plus 3.5.
All right, like 3 road favorites, a couple about a touchdown. That should go well. Nothing has ever gone wrong gambling on touchdown road favorites.
I'm sure we're going to have a great weekend.
All right, that's our mutual picks. Let's get into our regular picks. I got 6 picks this week. How many picks you got for us this week?
I had 7, but you sold me on an 8th one, so I'm going with 8.
Oh, big money coming out of the Achilles household this week. All right, 6 picks for me. I'm going to start it off in London. I'm going to take those Miami Dolphins minus 3. I didn't have enough punishment last week with the New York Jets. I want to watch the porous Miami offense fail to score and break the Jacksonville Jaguars 20-game losing streak here. So Dolphins minus 3 for me.
I can see that. Now, since I've got more, I'll give you 2 really quick. So my first one is I'm taking my Rams at minus 9.5. Again, don't recommend it for anyone else. This is just crazy fanatic talk.
Do you just have all touchdown road favorites this week?
Oh, dude, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Your money line parlays are going to be swimming.
My balance is just going to completely disintegrate by the time this week is done. But anyways, Rams minus 9.5, and I've also got the Packers at minus 5.5.
All right, next up for me, Detroit Lions plus 3.5. I'm going to ride the Lions at home with St. Brown as the number 1 receiver. So Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC. So Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's actually a 4-namer. So where can you go wrong with that? 4th round pick this year. So a rookie 4th round pick as the number 1.
A 4th round pick with 4 names. Sounds like
I think we could probably scour the waiver wire and put together a better receiver unit than what the Lions have. All right, what do you got up next?
For my number 3rd pick, I am taking the Arizona Cardinals at plus 3.5.
All right, I'm riding the Kansas City Chiefs minus 6.5. I'm going to roll with you on road touchdown favorites here. Chiefs 6.5. I look for them to dominate this game, score a lot of points.
Okay. For my next one, I've got the Cowboys at minus 3.5.
And next up for me, Minnesota, Carolina. I'm going to take that under 45.5. Let's just hope we're not quite as pick happy as this game might lead to be here. So Vikings, Panthers under 45.5.
For my 5th pick, I've got the Bills at minus 5.5.
All right, next up for me, I mentioned it in the mutuals. I was really big on this one. My Zag of the week, Seattle Seahawks, plus 5.5. Geno Smith, Alex Collins. What a tandem.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Smith, Collins. I don't even think they were in the league 3 years ago. Plus 5.5 for the Seattle Seahawks versus the Pittsburgh Steelers for me.
For my 6th pick, I am taking the under at 54.5 in the Kansas City and Washington game.
And lastly for me, Buffalo Bills, Tennessee Titans, first half over 26.5.
And my last two, I'm taking Kansas City at -6.5, and I'm taking the under at 50.5 in the Dallas New England game.
Oh my, you've been riding those New England unders. They've been nice for you.
Yes, they have.
All right, that's our show for this week. Be sure to come back to us on Tuesday for our recap and review. And don't miss out on our college football recap and review on Monday. We'll also be taping our NBA win totals podcast, I believe, later today, maybe tomorrow, depending on our energy levels and functionality. But you don't want to miss that. The NBA season's just around the corner. We're going to have a little fun on the NBA win totals. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. Achilles, where can we find you?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at TDAchilles.
All right, that's our show, and we're out.